Immigration is a hot-button issue. Some people want illegal immigrants sent home to their home countries. Others say California's economy needs them. Tonight, we'll hear from people who have strong opinions and take a look at some of the surprising facts about illegal immigration. LA County Supervisor Mike Antonovich is telling anyone who will listen that we have, quote, an economic catastrophe on our hands. The county spends more than $1.5 billion a year on health care, welfare payments, and jail costs for illegal immigrants. Those numbers are going up, and they don't even include education, but that may be only one side of the story. Now, this weekend, the Orange County Register published an unprecedented statistical analysis of census data going back 40 years. Now, here's some of the facts. California has more immigrants, legal and illegal, than any other state and more than nearly any other country in the world. Now, immigrants have filled most of the new jobs created in California since 1970, and nearly 1 in 10 of the state's total workforce are now illegal immigrants. The newspaper concludes that, like it or not, we become addicted to immigrant labor. Well, joining us tonight is Tony Bell. He's a spokesman for Supervisor Mike Antonovich and a deputy supervisor himself. And you see the information about Tony Bell to the side of him. Also, here is Mike Garcia, the president of the Services Employee International Union, United Service Workers West. Mike, let me start with you. Are we addicted to illegal immigrant labor?
Well, it's been a fact of life for decades. The recent immigration phenomena is not really recent. It's been a growing, developing trend over the last several decades. It's also part of the fabric and history of our country. We're a country built on immigrants and immigrant labor, so it's nothing new. And the information and facts that were provided by the Orange County Register just back up that reality.
But the numbers are staggering. $550 million in just public safety and the jail cost, and $500 million in health care, Tony. The supervisor says we can't continue that.
That's correct. We're looking at economic meltdown, and what we need to do first is differentiate between illegal and legal. The Orange County Register article failed to do that miserably, and what we do know is that legal immigration is the lifeblood of our nation, and it is those that are representing the illegal immigrants that are mixing the two in order to make political favor. We need to differentiate. Illegal immigration is going to cost Los Angeles County over almost $2 billion this year alone. That is too much for a county in recession. What we need to do is reform the immigration debate. We need to enforce our borders, stop the incentives from the federal government, cradle-to-grave incentives for illegal immigrants.
What about that, Mike? Those numbers are pretty staggering.
Yeah, they're staggering, but I think we need to look at what those services go for. Largely, those costs are attributed to health care, emergency room treatment, and these are life and death services, medical services that must be provided to the working people of our communities. And if they're in an emergency room, they have no place else to go. It's a life or death situation. It really comes down to what kind of society we want to have. Are we going to allow people to die on the streets or in waiting outside emergency rooms, or are we going to treat them? The other large portion that is attributed to these numbers, I understand, go to children. The children, legal residents who are children of undocumented workers. And again, it gets a question of what kind of society do we want to become? Do we want to reject these children that are looking for health care services or need educational services, or be part of a lunch program to make sure that the children of our society are eating nutritiously and their health is taken care of.
Right,
So
clearly,
also a children issue.
Clearly, all three of us are probably sons and daughters of immigrants, at least sons of immigrants, and there's no question that immigration is an important part of the American fabric. But you've got these numbers that are unsustainable. We can either continue to be a benevolent country and let everybody in, or go bankrupt and not be able to provide services for anyone. And that's kind of the argument that the Orange County Register is making. And Tony, you've gone to that point.
Well, look, we can no longer afford to be the HMO to the world. Our emergency rooms are taking everyone who comes, not just for emergency services, but for surgeries and everything else. And no, we do not want children on the streets, of course not. What we need to do is disincentivize illegal immigration in the first place. The federal government is requiring the counties and the cities to provide for illegal immigrants. from cradle to grave. We can no longer afford that. It's an affront to those who have come here legally. And it's also a human rights issue. These people are routinely being exploited by unscrupulous employers. They're being trafficked. They're being subject to all sorts of things, and we cannot protect them. You're creating an underclass of citizen, and it must stop. It's not fair, and we're looking for reform from the federal government. Enforce the border, stop incentivizing. We need an ID verification system for employers, and to crack down on employers that hire illegals.
What about the notion of that, Mike, the underclass? You recently had protesting members of your union out saying that, look, we're not being treated equally, we're not being treated fairly, that we need a raise, that we need to be treated like other people here in America. What about that?
Well, I agree with Tony in that the real issue here is immigration reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform that is going to legalize and bring these people out of the shadows so they're treated with the decency and respect that all workers of this country should be treated. I believe that the way to do that is comprehensive immigration reform. We also need a fix to our economy, our broken system that is creating all this unemployment, creating all this frustration, and is creating the targeting and scapegoating of immigrants as the problem to our nation's woes. I do believe our union is an example of workers standing up for themselves. They reflect the history of immigrants and immigration in this country, of immigrant workers standing up, fighting for a better life for themselves and following and future generations.
I think our state's unemployment rate is somewhere hovering around 12%. And this data that was provided to the Orange County Register, it's somewhere around 10% of illegal immigrants holding those jobs. If we eliminated the illegal immigration employment, wouldn't that even things out, Tony?
Well, to say that those jobs wouldn't be filled by legal immigrants or other citizens of the United States is ridiculous. The point is that we are, as a nation and as a county, providing for a whole population that takes much more than it contributes. That is unsustainable. We're in an economic crisis, and it needs to be addressed now. What we also need to do is make sure we have an employer verification system and perhaps look at a guest worker program whereby people can come here and work for a certain amount of time with a bond so that their health care costs are covered while they're here, and to find a fair and compassionate way to deal with this issue.
Like the Bracero program of the 50s. Mike, you'll have the last word. We've just got about 30 seconds left. Mike, go ahead. Your response to that.
Yes, I do believe we do need a immigration reform process and system that will stabilize the lives of these folks. I think at the end of the day we're going to end up with a system. It's all very political right now, politically charged. We need immigration reform. I want to point out the fact that the Orange County Register has pointed out that if we were to remove or deport the hard-working immigrants of the state, undocumented workers, we would lose over $164 billion in economic activity and 717,000 jobs. That would be a drastic blow to the economy of the state. Reality is immigrants have become a vital part of our economy. They are an engine to the economy of California. What we need is comprehensive immigration reform. We need a fix so that these workers that have established themselves here as part of our economy, established themselves as part of the stable workforce of this economy, be legalized.
Legal immigration, not illegal immigration, I might add.
We're certainly not going to solve the problem here tonight, but we appreciate very much your comments.